Huge episode of The Huddle. It is college football conference championship weekend, and Tony's 2 entries still alive in the country's biggest survivor pool. Let's huddle up. What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 10 of The Huddle, joined by my co-host, Tony Farmer, and joined once again by former NFL Draft Mr. Irrelevant and contestant on The Bachelorette, Ryan Hoag. What is up, fellas?
How we doing?
Good to be here. I was going to say, I know Tony had a big night last night. It was the Golden Bachelor finale, and he was in his hydrofacial mask with his girlfriend, I'm sure, watching it. But sadly, I did not watch.
With a bathrobe on and soaking my feet. Absolutely. How did you know, man? How do you know my world so well?
Your face is glowing.
A little housekeeping to take care of here off the top. Moving forward, starting next week on Wednesday, December 6th, The Huddle will be moving to every Wednesday. Each Wednesday, you can expect The Huddle, new episodes to come out. We appreciate the support on Friday, but here on out, starting next week, December 6th, we're moving to Wednesday. But first things first, guys, I want to talk to you about, I don't know if you saw this, but it was announced yesterday by Sports Illustrated that Deion Sanders was voted as the SI Person of the Year. Thoughts on that?
Man, I feel like if the voting had taken place maybe a month and a half ago or 2 months ago after Colorado had that first big upset, I think it would make a lot more sense. But the team's kind of tanked a bit since then, so it was a little surprising to see that. So it does literally have me having like logistics questions of when this was voted upon.
Yeah, for sure.
And my thought was, there's a lot of hatred going out towards that pick, but I don't know if people actually look into what the definition of Sportsperson of the Year is. Because when I look at Deion Sanders, I'm thinking, iconic. I'm thinking, monumental change. And this guy's, impacted college football and put it on the map like no other person has in the history of college football. So despite the fact that they've failed miserably towards the end of the season, like he really has been iconic with the change he's brought to in the fandom. And so I'm not opposed to him getting it. But again, I would need to see the criteria.
Well, I think another big element of it is potentially he was such a proponent for the student athletes getting paid as well. And obviously that's been a big story. Mm-hmm. So while my gut reaction is, wow, this is weird, when you sort of sit back and you think about it and his impact, he's in a Power 5 conference, not the best team in the Pac-12 certainly, but he's in a big conference. He's made change. He was in the news cycle for those first 4 or 5 weeks of college football. I don't know. I think it's warranted. So gun to your head right now, other than Deion, who would you pick? It can't be somebody it's not going to be like Jokic. It's not going to be someone from the NBA. Obviously won't be anyone from the NHL. Would it be Shohei? Would it be Travis Kelce?
Oh,
maybe Jokic?
God. Kelce.
Yeah.
Like the Travis Kelce call out?
You unfortunately you have to consider Kelce just because of
That's the
all
thing,
the
man.
hype around him. I don't want it to go there, but that's got to at least cross your mind. I hate it. How about like a general one, like a sports persons of the year? Can we give it to the NFL officials? Because they certainly are having a big impact. Wouldn't you guys agree this season?
Yeah, banner year for NFL refs for sure.
I was thinking Djokovic for me because he broke, obviously, Roger Nadal's records in the last year, and he doesn't look like he's stopping anytime soon. So he probably deserves it, even though I'm not a big fan.
Are you a Federer guy?
I'm a Federer and Nadal guy for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. But yeah, interesting that it was Coach Prime there for something, and I know it doesn't have the same impact as it did potentially when we were younger, but interesting nonetheless. But what's interesting to me is conference championship weekend, and Ryan, this is from Michigan State last year, the Michigan Pom-Pom. What's your take on this Big Ten championship game? Are we going to see a 7-5 Michigan win, or are they going to blow the doors off An Iowa Hawkeyes team that, to their credit, they're here, but that side of the Big Ten is honestly, it's a joke. Is that 21.5 point spread warranted here?
So first of all, you with that pom-pom, you have the Iowa colors on. So are you subliminally like sending a message that you're looking for the upset?
Hey man, don't rule it out. They can get 3 safeties in this one.
That is true. Unless Caitlin Clark is going to suit up, who could be a Sports Person of the Year candidate this year and probably next year as well. I look at Iowa and they played one really hard team, and that was Penn State, and they lost 31-0. And they had 76 total yards in that game and 4 first downs. Minnesota, obviously I'm a diehard Minnesota Gopher fan, and they beat Iowa. I think it was 12-10. And Minnesota showed a recipe for how to beat Iowa. You run the football. And Penn State had over 200 yards of rushing when they beat them. Minnesota had over 100 yards of rushing when they beat them. And what does Michigan do well? They run the football really well. I think, Kirk Ferentz is a very, very good coach. I think they keep it close within a half, and I think they have a special team score, and I think Michigan, though, in the second half just wears on them, ends up winning something like, it's going to be 23-10, something like that. I think Iowa covers. I think it's a low-scoring game because, Michigan doesn't necessarily, blow the doors off people offensively, but, maybe Iowa can get a field goal, but otherwise a special team score is the only way they have a chance.
Just a little correlated parlay opportunity here, guys. Maybe a little under with Iowa to cover in the parlay. I'm not a big parlay guy, but I'll dabble in a correlated parlay every once in a while. That's something to consider.
Let me put this out there. The last time Michigan was a fave of this much against Iowa, do you have any idea when this would be, Ryan?
Wow. When was Iowa really bad, I guess, which hasn't been for a long time. Maybe back in Hayden Fry's days of coaching Iowa. I don't know. I'll go 88.
Michigan was 24-point faves against Iowa in 2016. And what happened then? Michigan was unbeaten up to that point, and then Keith Duncan hit a walk-off field goal for Iowa to win the game straight up.
Ooh.
Is there any chance that happens? We know Iowa's going to keep it close. We know it's going to be smash mouth football.
I've watched Iowa enough. Unless Cade McNamara is coming back from injury, which, they're playing with their backup quarterback. They have been all year. They have trouble, unless you're looking at a defensive score and a special teams. Michigan's defense is too good. And, Penn State, which is, a good team, not great team, especially compared to Michigan. They blew them out of the water, 31-rip. So I just don't see how Iowa contends. But again, to your point, they do tend to keep it close. If they can keep it close and the pressure goes all on Michigan, my question to you is, if Michigan loses, are they in the college football playoff?
Man, that's a tough one. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, whether or not, Michigan beats Ohio State. A loss to Iowa does not look good. I think we need to find out if Louisville beats Florida State, because Florida State's unbeaten. We need to figure out if Texas somehow gets in the mix. We need to figure out, if Alabama wins straight up, does that throw an even bigger wrench into everything?
Michigan's
totally.
plus 1,300, by the way, for no to make the playoffs.
Wow, okay.
And, how does Michigan lose? Do they lose by 2 touchdowns to Iowa, or do they lose on a walk-off field goal? I think that probably factors in as well.
Yeah, 100%. We talked briefly about Alabama, and Ryan, I want your take on this SEC game. It is rarefied air when the Crimson Tide is an underdog, and here they are, plus 5.5, plus 6, depending on the book, against the best team in the country. But both teams coming off really, really weird games last weekend, and I know it's rivalry week, but Georgia Tech was hanging around against Georgia. The Iron Bowl was another 60 minutes of madness with Milroe hitting Bond in the touchdown, in the end zone for the touchdown to cement that one. But both teams sort of just hanging on by a thread. What do you see happening in this one, and are you betting this one?
I am staying away from this one, although everything tells me to bet against Alabama because I just do not like Alabama. I think they've been a fraud all year. They've been dealing with, trying to figure out the quarterback position. They almost lost to South Florida, who's traditionally one of the worst teams in the country. And, the reason Alabama, besides the fact that they have more pros than everybody every year, but they always win in the trenches. And I think in the pros, you need a good quarterback to be a Super Bowl contender. In college football, obviously quarterback is always there, but offense and defensive line, if you can dominate that, you're going to do well. And Alabama, every single year, has one of the best, if not the best, offense and defensive lines. Georgia has been able to kind of usurp them the last few years, and that's why they've won the national championship the last 2 years. But Alabama this year does not dominate you in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. And that's going to spell trouble against a really, really athletic Georgia front. And then Alabama, for the first time in a long time, also doesn't have that guy, that 4-3 just speed demon that's going to, be a Heisman contest or a candidate and things like that. So although I'm not all about Georgia winning the national championship, I don't think it's, a foregone conclusion. I think they're slightly better than Alabama. And so I think, Georgia, I think they cover, but it's probably going to be one of those last possession, fourth quarter kind of type of games.
What do you have against the University of Alabama Crimson Tide?
Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban is, although I respect him, I think he's a good coach. When he went to the Miami Dolphins and he just brought this, and I didn't have the opportunity to play for him, but I know people that did. And he was just kind of he brought that college mentality of just being a bully. And I remember, I know he made like a grown man cry, offensive lineman on the Miami Dolphins cry. And, ever since I heard stories come out of that and just kind of what kind of person he was as a coach, like that really rubs me the wrong way. And I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And obviously his way works, but doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Tony, any thoughts on the SEC championship game here?
Man, I'm just going to grab a big bowl of popcorn and I'm just going to sit back and watch it, not touching it. When it comes to these bowl games, I like to tell people, would you bet this game on a busy slate of Saturday games? And if it doesn't stick out to you, you don't have that high level of conviction that you like the side or you like the total, don't bet it just to bet it. Don't bet it just because you're bored and want a fun game to watch. So that's the boat that I'm in for this one.
It's good advice, but honestly, and to some of Ryan's points, like Auburn was really kind of moving the chains against Alabama, especially on the ground. I don't know, man. I think inside 7 points, I think potentially Georgia wins this by double digits. Speaking of double digits, Pac-12 sort of hanging around 9.5, 10, with the Ducks as favorites there. That one goes tonight. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but Ryan, I don't think Michael Penix looks the same. Certainly not the same guy that beat Oregon earlier in the year. Struggled against, a really good Oregon State defense. But then last week in the Apple Cup, he did not look good, not making those throws. What do you see in this Pac-12 championship game?
Well, that Apple Cup, it's always a rivalry game, so it's going to be probably a hard-fought battle, and it was terrible weather. So I kind of erased that one. The reason Washington's been so dominant is they have an elite coach, elite quarterback, and a top 10 pick and wide receiver. And that's a recipe for, really good things in an explosive offense for sure. This is one of those where I feel bad for the Washingtons of the world because I think they probably end up losing to Oregon. They've done everything right. They've went undefeated. They've been the best team in the Pac-12, and now they're probably going to be left out of the college football playoff because they lose in this bonus game that not everybody has the opportunity to play in. And that kind of stinks, I would think they would put Ohio State in over Washington if Washington loses. And again, Ohio State didn't even earn the opportunity to play in a championship game. So why does Ohio State belong over Washington? And so that's a bummer. I mean, Oregon, again, Bo Nix is playing at a Heisman level. They got elite coaching and they got speed all over the place. And that first game was really, really entertaining. I expect, a high-scoring first half, and then Oregon pulls away, unfortunately.
Yeah, since that game, middle of October, if memory serves me correctly, it just feels like Oregon and Bo Nix have trended up, and then Washington and Penix, although they won, ever since then they've just been trending down. I think the spread is warranted for this one. I do think, and to your point, Oregon having athletes everywhere, they've got the better defense, they've got the better secondary. You can make the case that Bo Nix is the better QB. Certainly now with Penix not looking good, looks like he's nursing some sort of malady or some sort of injury. Man, oh man, I've been with Washington, most of the season, but I think tonight, it's all about the Ducks. So with that in mind, Ryan, who are your 4 CFP teams?
Well, I think upset alert for me is Louisville upsetting Florida State. The key number for Louisville is 3. They've had 3 turnovers in their 2 losses, and otherwise they've won the turnover battle in every other game except one. And Florida State's playing their second or third quarterback, and that's a recipe for, could be a first start ever or a second start ever for a quarterback, and a big, all the pressure. Florida State, is more than just a quarterback, but Louisville really well coached under Jeff Brom, who came from Purdue, and I just see that as being, a close game, and who's got the better quarterback in a close game. A backup number 2 or 3 quarterback is probably not who I want leading me, especially when a college football playoff's on the line. I think Michigan, I think Georgia, I think Oregon, and then, I think Texas. I think they beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's given up over 100 points in the last 3 games. They might keep it close because they're, representing the Big 12 and wanting, to show Texas that they're no longer welcome. But I think Texas is just too talented, even though, again, another backup quarterback. There's like 5 playing in these championship games this week.
Yeah, news circulating last night that Florida State's number 2 Tate Rodemaker might be hurt now after he took a bit of a late hit against the Gators last week. Do you guys remember years ago, Florida State, I think it was in their bowl game, they had no more QBs left and Anquan Bolden had to play quarterback for them? Do you remember that? He was actually pretty good.
And he played unbelievably well.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that because I was at the NFL Combine with him, and I was like watching him run routes as a receiver, and I was like, that was the quarterback that I was watching? Like, this guy is an athlete.
Before we move on
to underrated, by the way, Anquan Bolden, I'd say top 10 underrated NFL wide receivers of my lifetime. That guy's going on that top 10 list. So tough, so fun to watch. That guy, loved him.
Yeah, Anquan Bolden, wicked. I'll throw another name out there for the top 10 underrated wide receivers of all time, and you'll know this guy very well, Tony. Yeah, Ryan Hoag won, but Brandon Lloyd.
Oh, okay. If we're going off of highlight reel catches, and you're just going to give me I don't think there's a better receiver for highlight reel catches. Now, there's people out here who haven't seen Brandon Lloyd tape, and they're like, come on, Tony, no way. Put the highlights on. Yeah, unbelievable. Man. The sideline catch against the Seahawks that year where he tipped it. Yep. Guy's like an acrobat and an NFL receiver all in one. Incredible. Good one there.
Yeah, University of Illinois, if memory serves.
He was University of Illinois. He came out the same year as me. I played with him with Washington, and I tell you what, one of the more unique individuals you will ever meet. But I will say this. You compare Anquan Bolden and Brandon Lloyd, there is no comparison. Like, Brandon Lloyd would make some spectacular catches, but Anquan Bolden was that dude. Like, he was that dude. I remember asking a teammate that played with both he and Larry Fitzgerald, and they were like, it's not even close. Anquan Bolden's better.
Wow.
So hold up, going back to Lloyd, you said you called Lloyd unique. Are you saying quirky, or like what do you mean when you say unique?
Well, let's just say, how can I put this? His pregame outfits were something to marvel at, And he was just, he was just a different dude. He walked to the beat of his own drum for sure.
The only thing that I enjoy more than listening to Ryan talk about college football is listening to Ryan choose his words carefully so he doesn't get himself into trouble. That was fun to watch. That was good. That's good television right there.
Before we move on to Tony, your incredible run here in your Survivor pool and the Week 13 NFL board, Ryan, are there any more of those conference championship games that have caught your eye? Maybe in those sort of lesser known or lesser followed conferences?
Yeah, the only one for me is the AAC, SMU versus Tulane. Tulane won it last year, and they've been there before. They have one loss this year, and they were tied in the fourth quarter against Ole Miss. And obviously, Ole Miss is a top 20 team. They're playing a team, SMU, that has a couple losses, and they just lost their starting quarterback last week. So they have a new guy, backup quarterback for his first ever starting in a big game. That's a recipe for a loss, in my opinion. Look for Tulane, even though it's a really mysterious low. I think -2.5 for Tulane. I think they win by double digits, so that would be the one I would watch.
Yeah, interesting. Good call. I'm seeing Tulane -3 at my book, but I'll have a look at that one for sure. Also having a look at Tony's Week 13, and Tony, I'll let you drive the bus a bit here, but I envy you and I do not envy you because this week's board is not great, man. But what's the process here? Where's your head at? How are you looking at this week's board?
So kind of to recap for Survivor, 9,267 people started. We're down to 80. I've got 2 of those entries left. Teams like the Chiefs are used. Only 2 people could have used the Cowboys last night. So really the teams that we're looking for that we're down to are going to be the Chargers on the road at New England. We've got the Bucks, who are going to be going up against the Panthers in Tampa. Now, remember the Panthers just lost their head coach. They're getting healthy on defense. That's one to consider as well. Process-wise, look, do you trust the Falcons against the Jets? If you want to zig when other people zag, that's the game right there, Falcons against Jets. And then you've got the Steelers against the Cardinals as well. And so these are all some options out there. Things to consider. Whenever I talk to people about Survivor pools, they're always like, oh, go with this team. They're the most likely to win. But it's so much more than that. You've got to consider these teams' future schedules. So, for instance, I like the Steelers against the Cardinals. But next week, the Steelers have the Patriots in Pittsburgh on a short week. And then the Steelers also have a pretty sweet matchup week 16 as well against the Bengals that you might want to save them for in Pittsburgh. So it's not just about who's more likely to win, but the future and who do you expect other people in the pool are going to take this week, because you don't want to be on the chalk. You want to kind of avoid the chalk in these things. That's my personal strategy, at least. And so, yeah, my head's spinning. It's all I've been thinking about this week. But I do have some big news, you guys. And I think Ryan is going to especially appreciate this. So there has been a transaction that has taken place with my entry. 4% of both of my entries have been sold. So I am now 96% owner of the DD3's entry. So I've recouped, I don't know if I should say the exact dollar amount here on this transaction. The contract says, confidential, all that sort of stuff. But I've recouped my original entry fee. So I can't lose at this point. And if I do win big, if I win millions of dollars, someone else is going to be getting 4% of those millions of dollars. Ryan, how
Tony,
are you feeling?
I want both of you guys to pick a number 1 through 80. Pick a number 1 through 80, any number.
1 through 8. 7.
5.
Oh, you both went single digits. Ironically, it was a single digit number. It was 2. I always pick my college football number 2. But okay, so Tony, you had a 2 in 80 chance, or 1 in 80 chance of getting it correct. 2, if I count both of you guys, and it was wrong. You just lost out on all your money. So that's why I say sell now, sell more than 4%, take your money. The implied value is over 200. How many times in your life will you have the opportunity to get $250,000 potentially? Like, my thought process for you, Tony, is sell and take you can have a little bit of your percentage, a little nibble, sell.
Here's what you're missing in that, though. And it's fair. It's good, strong advice, and I appreciate the perspective. But here's what you're missing. I would argue it's not a 2 in 80 chance or a 1 in 40 chance here, because 4 of the entries don't have the Chiefs or the Eagles on Christmas. They're going to have to roll with, one of them is going to have to roll with an underdog on Christmas. Someone else, 2 other people are going to have to flip a coin and go 49ers Ravens on Christmas. And so I really feel like my entry is stronger than an average entry. So while the odds still aren't great, it's better, in my opinion, than a 2 in 80 chance, 1 in 40 chance here.
This is the NFL, though, Tony, right? I think these guys are paid professionals. Guess what? The worst player on the worst team in the NFL, which is Carolina, the worst player on that team would win the Outlander Trophy in the college football this year, or be a Heisman candidate, depending on the position. Like, that's what people don't understand. The worst player in the NFL would be one of the best, would be an All-American in college football. So every single game is going to be contested. There are no sure things, right? Carolina last year fired their coach middle of the season. Guess what? Steve Wilkes, he went 6-1 to finish the season. They galvanized behind, right, the new coach, right? So people are thinking, oh, Tampa's a shoo-in. No, Tampa's not a shoo-in. I was one of 4 survivors last year in my pool, right? We decided to split half of the winnings amongst us, and then we played for the additional 4. 3 of us lost that next week. We all picked the Bills to win at home against the Jets, and the Jets upset them, right? So, and it was 15.5 point spread or something like that. Like it's there are no sure things, and the one sure thing is that you could get 6 figures for your picks right now. Take that money. Otherwise, you're going to be on here in 2 weeks being like, man, well, at least I broke even. And it's like, well, or you could have listened to us and walked away with a new house.
Wait, us, Andrew, are you on team Tony here, or are you on team Ryan? Hold on.
So answer me this. What does the marketplace look like for one of these 80 entries? Like, what could you fetch for one of these?
Good question. So early on in the contest, they were going for above market value, higher than the intrinsic value. Now that the price has gone up, it's actually going for a little under intrinsic value, which makes sense, right? A lot of people have $5,000, $10,000 lying around, but not a lot of people have $100,000 lying around. So confidently right now, I feel like I could get $100,000 each for these, slightly below market value. So $200,000, I feel like I could get. But we're going for 9 million. And here's the other angle I need to throw out there for you guys. This is important. And some people aren't going to understand this, but this is important. The entry name's DD3's Revenge. That's my entry name. It's named after a good friend of mine, gambling buddy, who's passed away. He passed away in 2019 in a car accident. He would not approve of me taking the conservative approach. He would want me to go for it, and this is for him. This is I watch the games with his ashes in my pocket every week, and he would not want me to sell my entries right now. So I got to keep that in mind as well.
I can most certainly respect that. If it were me, though, I would offload one of those entries. You're blessed that you have 2. You've got 2 of these, and to get 6 figures on it, man, whoo! That's life-changing money.
If I were to unload, it would be 49% of one entry at this point, right? Because that would allow me to control both of them. The value of having 2 entries in one of these things, it's like a poker tournament when you've got more chips than everybody else. There's only 7 people now who have 2+ entries. And so I wouldn't want to sell one entirely and lose control of the decision-making process, because there might be points down the road where I want to do a split and sort of guarantee myself a chance of advancing. When you have 2 entries, in a way, the contest is 1 week shorter, if you think of it that way. And it also gives you some opportunities to take some chances. But I want to know from you guys, I know, Ryan, we've talked about it a little bit off air. Andrew, of these options this week, are you going to trust the Chargers on the road against New England? Are you going to trust the Steelers against the Cardinals? I mean, what would you do this week?
So If you had asked me this on Tuesday, I was all in on Tampa Bay at home against the Panthers. But I think some good points have been raised about the Panthers in this situation previously, where they fire, some of the staff, head coach included. And then Ryan and I were talking before we went to air, and he's talking about that whole galvanizing around this crisis element. And that's real, and that happens. I see it in the NHL. There's an old betting adage that, when that coach gets fired, first game back, the team galvanizes and they rally around. And more often than not, they win that first game after a head coach firing. So I do not feel as confident about Tampa Bay than I did earlier in the week. I love the irony that the Patriots are going to Bailey Zappi now against the Chargers, that, the Zap against the Chargers. That always makes me chuckle. I do kind of like that one, only where the Chargers are the better team, but straight up, what's the spread? 5 points? Straight up, I think I don't feel 100% confident about it, but I feel better about it than the Buccaneers, because the Chargers have a way of losing a backdoor cover and stuff. But with a backup QB in New England, they're sort of in crisis mode. I don't know. I don't like.
Did you hear what Juju Smith-Schuster said about Zappi?
No.
A reporter asked him, "What's something? Tell us something that Zappi does well, or something good about him." He said, "He's a good-looking guy." That's your starting receiver said that about your quarterback that has just been named starter. That's the best thing he could say about him, is that he's a good-looking dude.
That's telling for sure.
That's rough.
The other game we got here is Monday night, Jacksonville hosting the Bengals. Bengals, we saw how bad they looked last week. No quarterback there in that game. The only thing is, once again, we have to look going forward, and the Jaguars play the Panthers in a beautiful Week 17 matchup. As Ryan said, there's no guarantees, but that Jaguars against the Panthers Week 17 is as close to a free square as you're going to get into a contest like this. So I would love to save Jacksonville, but would be pretty sweet to have them in a Monday night game, the last game of the week, create some hedging opportunities, etc.
It's a good one for sure. You've used Detroit in both entries? Because I love Detroit.
Correct.
Even though they're on the road, I love that matchup against New Orleans. What do you think here, Ryan? If you've got two entries, what games are you looking at?
So my concern is that while Cincinnati's offense didn't look good, they still have playmakers, and it was still a final possession game. I mean, we were watching, and the Steelers, who have everything to play for, they had to battle, even though they dominated in most. It was still a very close game. So I wouldn't say Jacksonville is just a shoo-in to win on Monday night against the Bengals. I personally would. I think Chargers. I would use one of my entries on the Chargers, and then I would do the other one on the Steelers versus the Cardinals, because I think the Cardinals have kind of packed it away.
So you trust so not thinking about the future. Let's put that aside for a moment. You trust the Chargers over the Jaguars more this week.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, my thinking right now is that Jaguars are safer, but the Chargers are more strategic and maybe the better long-term play, though it's riskier. What do you think about that, Andrew? Just those two options right there.
The Chargers and the Jags?
Yep.
The thing that I have a hang-up for in that Chargers-Pats game is on the sideline between the head coaches. And we've got an NFL master in Bill Belichick and a dude that fumbles the bag week in, week out in Staley. And to put that much on the line, even though on paper, I love the Chargers team. They should be well above 500. I like Justin Herbert. I like those weapons they have. But why are they where they're at? And to me, it's because of Staley. And he constantly fumbles in close, tight spots. And I think there's such an advantage for the Pats in that one element that I wouldn't be surprised if Monday we're talking about an upset with the Patriots beating the Chargers.
What does Bill Belichick what does Bill Belichick do well? He takes away what you do best, and the Chargers are so one-dimensional now with Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler isn't the same player. He's averaging under 4 yards a carry recently, and so it's like if the Chargers only do one thing really well, and that's what Bill Belichick is known for, that scares me a little bit in that game.
That's all good and fine. However, the Patriots offense the last 3 weeks have not scored over 10 points, I believe.
It's tough.
Right? And now you got a backup quarterback coming in. He's a backup for a reason, right? And what do backup quarterbacks like to do? They like to throw their tight ends. The Patriots have 2 good tight ends. Guess what? Derwin James is maybe the best cover safety of tight ends in the NFL. Okay, so that's taken out of the play. No quarterback likes pressure. Khalil Mack's playing like 6 years ago. Like he's playing at an elite level. They're going to be able to rush the quarterback. And so, yes, it might be a white knuckle type of game and it might go to the fourth quarter, but I'll take the offensive weapons and Herbert over Bill Belichick in that defense because I think they'll make one more play. Again, it's going to be close and it's going to be stressful, but Chargers have something to play for. Patriots, I could see Bill Belichick being like, you know what? We're eliminated. I think they're the only AFC team that's eliminated, if I'm not mistaken. And he might be playing chess when everybody's playing checkers and be like, hey, we're going to look at the future and try to, leapfrog Carolina and get the best quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
Patriots also have probably the worst kicker in the NFL. This Ryland kid, this rookie kicker, he's hitting under 70% of his field goals. And in what I think we all agree is going to be a pretty close game in Foxborough, having a kicker who you can't depend on with the potential for $9 million on the line, that would be a vote for the Chargers for sure.
It's a terrible week, man. And what did the Patriots, the first team in 30 years to allow 10 points in back-to-back weeks and lose both? Is that a real thing as well? Score 10 points?
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yes. I think they went 3 weeks in a row of allowing fewer than 12 points or something, and they lost all 3 or something ridiculous. It's also weather potential, right? 40s and rain, and which, again, leads to a sloppy who runs the ball better type of game and comes down to field goal kickers. And they brought in
weather scares me. Weather scares me in Survivor. Weather scares the heck out of me in Survivor. Survivor's all about eliminating uncertainty, and weather adds a level of uncertainty. A random fumble that you can't handicap for, and things like that. Bad snap on a field goal attempt. The holder not handling the ball well. Things like that. And so, yeah, good point on the weather there, Ryan. I need to keep a close eye on the weather for all these games this week.
I think we do need to bring up one thing. Tony lost 6 of his picks, 6 of his entries this year because he didn't take my advice. Just for the record, let that be known. He wanted Washington.
Wait. That is accurate. What Ryan just said is completely accurate. However, if I had taken your advice and sold 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have had the implied value. So I'm glad I didn't take your advice there. But I will say this, Ryan. I need to give Ryan some serious credit here. Because as I'm in this contest, a lot of people don't want to give me advice right now. It's like when a pitcher's pitching a perfect game and nobody's sitting around him in the dugout. A lot of people don't want to give me advice because they don't want me to go down on their advice. Ryan was very assertive last week about the Steelers. I was leaning a bit toward the Vikings, and really our conversation about the Vikings being a little iffy against the Bears and some good points about why the Steelers were live last week really was kind of a turning point for me in choosing the Steelers. So you get all the props in the world for that one, Ryan, for sure.
So I want to know, you guys were in Vegas last week watching the games together. So this is a two-parter, but I'll tee up Ryan first. What is it like watching Tony watch these games at the sportsbook? What's it like watching him?
I'll be honest. It brought me back to my pro football days and the last roster cut. I was that nervous. I mean, This guy's walking around, pacing up and down, the sports book, screaming at the top of his lungs. Everybody's staring at, and I'm just sweating, hoping, like living off every emotion he's living off of. It was the most intense experience I've ever had watching a game, not live, but it made my stomach churn and made me feel as though like cuts were coming. And I mean, because again, to his point that he just made, like I did have an impact on some of those picks, and I would have felt absolutely mortified if the Steelers would have lost and Minnesota would have won, because I was so adamant telling him, look, the Bears always play Minnesota tough. The Bears are trending upwards at the right time and Minnesota's not. Like, be careful. And so I would have absolutely wanted to have nothing to do with him the rest of my life if I would have been the reason he was out on $9 million.
So you mentioned Tony pacing around the sports book. Tony, you shared a clip with me and Steve, but I noticed you were sock-footed in that clip. Is that a choice? Like, are you at the book just in sock feet running around?
Listen, man, you've got to be comfortable at the sports book. I got a bag of snacks. Ryan can speak to my bag of snacks. I got a bag of snacks. The shoes are off. I may or may not be in a hoodie. You're sitting there watching these games for, 9 hours essentially on a Sunday, right? Early games, late games, and then the Sunday night game. You need to be cozy. You need to be comfy. So I've got no shame whatsoever about being sockless. Comfort is king, you guys. You got to be comfortable for these games, especially when that heart rate's getting up.
Ryan, did that make you feel awkward that you were sat next to somebody at the book that dressed hobo-like? I'll just put out there, snowshoes, hoodie.
The dude doesn't bring like normal like movie theater snacks either. This guy's like got jars of olives that he's pulling out of the fam. Like olives, celery sticks. The guy had stalks of celery in his backpack that he's pulling out, chomping on, and I'm like, wow, this guy's really in it to win it. Might as well get a sleeping bag. People are coming up asking him, like, what are you betting on? Thinking he has like $1 million on a prop bet or something, because he's living off every, like, if it's a loss of one, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, let's go.
You got to have coconut water and olives at the sports book. That's my biggest tip of the day.
Olives and celery stalks. That's a move, man. Holy cow, I've never heard that before. Olives and celery stalks.
Hold on, not just celery stalks. We need some pecan butter to dip the celery stalks in as well. I'm not an animal. I'm not just eating celery stalks by themselves. I'm dipping it in nut butter, guys. Come on.
So Tony, I'll put it to you. What's it like at the sports book with an ex-NFLer? Like, what's it like watching games with Ryan?
It was awesome. Seriously. Like, I recommend to everybody out there, try to find a way to watch a game with a former NFL player, because I consider myself an expert in NFL football. I've been watching it since I was a kid, but I saw the game from a different angle watching with Ryan. There was one really cool moment during the Steelers game. So let me set the scene here. I need the Steelers to recover an onside kick. We all know what an onside kick looks for. We all know that when that guy recovers the onside kick, if you're rooting for that team, you want him to get down on the ground quickly, because the other players are going to be kind of jabbing at him, trying to force a fumble, right? So before the onside kick, Ryan's trying to kind of calm me down a little bit, because I'm amped up and I'm like, come on, please, let me get this onside kick. I don't want to go down like this. I don't want to have the other team recover the onside kick. Ryan says, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, basically, the good news here is that the Steelers have Danny Smith, one of the best special team coaches in the league, so he's going to see all angles. So I felt better about that. I'm like, all right, Ryan used to play for this guy. He knows this is a good special teams coach. I'm feeling better. Well, the Steelers recover the onside kick, and I don't remember who the player was that grabbed it, but he's staying up. He's not going down. And I'm screaming. I'm in the aisle of the sports book, and I'm like, go down, go down. And I look over at Ryan like, what the heck? Why didn't the guy go down? And it turns out it was a brilliant move by special teams coach Danny Smith, because there was like 2:04 left on the clock, and they didn't want to have to run a play before the 2-minute warning, because then the Steelers would have been playing defense again in that game potentially. And so it was a brilliant move where this special teams coach saw it. I mean, I didn't know who the Steelers special teams coach was. Ryan says Danny Smith. As soon as the announcers figure out what happened, they're like, Oh, great move by Danny Smith. Like a minute and a half after Ryan said this guy's name. So that was a really cool moment. And there's other times in the game where I'm angry that a receiver dropped a pass. And I'm like, come on, you got to catch that. And Ryan, being a former receiver, I remember one point he's like, actually, that needs to be a better throw by the quarterback. And I'm like, what do you mean? It was right on the money. He's like, no, the way he was coming out of his break, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was cool, man. It was a really cool experience. So I'll watch a game with you anytime, Ryan.
Right on. It was George Pickens that made that play. And your first initial thought was George Pickens has traditionally been kind of a me guy. So you were worried that he was just trying to go score and do it. But yeah, Danny Smith, I had him in Washington, and the attention to detail that guy has, it was second to none in terms of probably any coach actually I had in the NFL. It was really, really amazing. And it's never the receiver's fault. Just remember that, especially if I'm the receiver. It's always the quarterback.
Every time.
Ryan, what is your go-to snack for NFL Sundays?
Oh, what is my go-to snack? I'm a chips and guac type of guy. I'm pretty simple and, not a celery stalk and olive oil or whatever he was lathering on there, going raw dog in it sometimes. But yeah, I'm a chips and guac guy.
Yeah, I hear you. Tony,
let's get Andrew. What's your go-to snack, buddy?
Same thing pretty much, man. Like, I'm a chip and a dip kind of guy. Nothing too crazy. I'm pretty basic when it comes to my snacks. I might do up some chicken wings or something, but yeah, like a chip and a chocolate. That's all I need, man.
How about wings or pizza for you guys?
Pizza.
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree. Like 7 times out of 10, I'll go pizza, but sometimes you just want a chicken wing. Drinks of choice?
Coconut water.
I'm a water guy.
Okay. All right.
Andrew, your drink of choice, buddy? I picture you as a red wine guy holding a glass. But maybe not.
Yeah, I think you're a craft beer, extra hoppy.
Yeah, I'm. Both of those can find their way onto the coffee table on a Sunday. Definitely a beer or a wine, or a scotch, maybe even some sake. Like a little bit of everything. Nice. Yeah. Speaking of everything, let's get into our picks, Tony. Start us off here. What are you feeling strong about going into the NFL weekend?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that Panthers-Buccaneers game, and I do think there's going to be a bit of a boost here for the Panthers with this new leadership, new head coach. So I like the Panthers plus 5.5 here. Carolina's secondary is getting healthy. All season we've seen J.C. Horn, C.J. Henderson hurt at different times. It looks like those guys are getting healthy. They just got a new cornerback on their team as well. And Tampa Bay's banged up. They've got some defenders, Levante David, Jamel Dean, that are banged up. And so I think this is a game where Carolina is going to be feisty. I don't know that they're going to be able to pull out the win on the road, but with 5.5 points, I bet it at plus 6. I still like it at plus 5.5 here. Go ahead and feel comfortable with Carolina plus 5.5.
I'm looking at the MAC championship, and we've got Miami of Ohio against Toledo. I'm going to go Toledo here as 7.5-point favorites. Miami injuries are a real problem. Brett Gabbert getting hurt basically took everything out of the passing game for Miami of Ohio. Avion Smith just hasn't impressed since taking over. And then their top receiver, Gage Lavardin, has been hurt, and he's a game-time decision. And I think Toledo's offense is going to be too much. This is your quintessential offense versus defense game here. Red Hawks have the best defense in the conference, Toledo the best offense, but I just think Toledo has a little bit too much here for Miami. Finn, really good dual threat quarterback, and Maryland transfer Penny Boone, absolute monster in the backfield, 7.4 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns. Toledo already beat them. Toledo won the regular season meeting 21-17 as 1.5-point favorites. Toledo was up 21-3 into the fourth quarter in that one. And I think we see Toledo get out to a similar lead here, but hold on to it this time because Miami's just not going to be able to generate any offense here. So give me the Rockets at 7.5-point faves, and I'm sort of feeling the under 44 in this one as well.
Andrew, I know you'll agree with me here. This is going to be the funnest game of the NFL weekend to watch. 49ers at Eagles.
Ugh.
This is a major revenge game for the 49ers. Lost Brock Purdy in the postseason. Everybody knows the story. But they had this game circled all offseason. The 49ers have been looking forward to this game and proving that they're the better team against the Eagles. They need it more in terms of sort of positioning for the playoffs. The Eagles have a little bit of a buffer here. 49ers need this game if they want the number 1 seed. Javon Hargrave, I think, is going to be their secret weapon. Came over from Philadelphia last year. He's got to be taking it a little bit personally that Philadelphia wasn't willing to pay him after the great season that he had. 49ers valued him more. He's got to have some inside information on schematically how the Eagles defense works, strengths and weaknesses of the other guys on that defensive line. I think Javon Hargrave has a big game, maybe 1.5 sacks in this. I could see that, maybe 2 sacks, a couple splash plays. And then the 49ers are healthy. For the first time in a while, this team going into a big game has all their star pieces. Even, players along the offensive line are pretty healthy. I like the 49ers' chances in this one to cover.
Love your optimism, man. That game is already giving me anxiety as we sit here on a Friday morning. This pick is specifically for you, Tony. It's over to the Premier League. Manchester City hosting Tottenham. Pains me to say that Manchester City may score more than Miami of Ohio this weekend, and my beloved Tottenham Hotspur are going to be the victims. I'm on over 3.5 for this one. We know how Tottenham is going to play because manager Ange Postecoglou only knows one way: high defensive line and attacking football. So I'm pretty sure we can expect City to pick apart that high Tottenham back four. And we're decimated with injuries. Full squad, I think Tottenham could hang in this one, but considering the long and depressing injury list, we'll probably see Tottenham start 4 fullbacks across the back line again like they did against Aston Villa. And City will cut through them like a hot knife through butter. And any fantasy Premier League players, for the love of God, triple captain Haaland. He could score 5. He could score 6. I don't know. The sky is literally the limit for this weekend. Tottenham is going to lose badly here, but hey, they're going to look doing it. I'm on the over 3.5.
I like it. My last pick here, I like the Lions to cover this week. I think the Lions are going to come out angry in this one. We saw them big upset on Thanksgiving. Packers upset the Lions. And really, when you watch that game, it wasn't anything schematically that was happening that caused the Lions to lose. Honestly, they just looked flat. It looked like the Packers just had more intensity this week on that short week, and I think that's going to change this week. I think you're going to see this team firing on all cylinders. You know Dan Campbell's going to get that team fired up, and the Saints are battling some serious injuries. They're one of their best pass rushers. Cameron Jordan is probably going to be out for this one, and at wide receiver, they might be down their top 3 receivers in this one. So you've got Derek Carr, who's looked shaky at times this season without his weapons, in just a really bad spot for the Saints. Lions have extra rest in this one coming off the Thanksgiving game. Lions have tons of motivation. Lions are angry. I think this is a game where you could see the Saints get absolutely steamrolled.
Yeah, strong agree. I love it as a bounce back spot for Detroit in that one. My Week 13 NFL touchdown parlay comes in at plus 26.51. First leg, Jalen Waddle. Washington can't defend the pass, so I'll look for Jalen Waddle this week. Miami probably in a spot where they put up a bunch of points. Waddle's seen 8 targets in back-to-back games. He had a great game against the Jets, but hasn't found the end zone since that Pats game a few weeks ago, so I like him to hit pay dirt. I'm going to go CJ Stroud plus 400. Broncos still bottom of the league against the run, and CJ leads this team in rushing touchdowns. And at 4-1, and the Texans at home, how can I not add him to the ticket? And then last one, Bijan Robinson. He's starting to really produce. 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown in his last 4. Jets can't stop the run. Mostert had a nice game on Black Friday, so I see Robinson getting some nice work in on Sunday. So there's your anytime touchdown parlay, which I did hit 2 weeks ago, of course, at around plus 2,400 or thereabouts. Ryan, I want to ask you as our college basketball guy. I haven't been paying too close attention to college hoops just yet. You seeing anything, any trends or any teams sort of popping off in college basketball?
Yeah, I can't believe we went this entire time and haven't talked about college basketball, especially considering tonight, probably the premier college basketball game of the year. We got UConn defending champs at Kansas, and Kansas is, I think Kansas is -3. I like UConn to cover. UConn has been missing one of their best players, who's a 5-star freshman guard. I think tonight's his first game. He's going to be back. It's kind of questionable whether or not he will. But UConn has been unbelievable. Creighton, who's a preseason Final Four pick for me, they've been really good. But my surprise team of the year so far, Colorado State. Coach Medved, Nico Medved, he's a Minnesota native, so that's why I'm familiar with him. He would be coach of the year right now. They're undefeated. They just went into Colorado and won a tough game. They've covered, I think, in every single game this year, including beating Creighton by 20 in a tournament a week ago. Colorado State, keep them on your radar as a sleeper Final Four team.
And I'm going to put you on the spot before we go. I know, according to the odds, it's Bo Nix, but who do you think is taking the Heisman this year?
Jaden Daniels. Give me Jaden Daniels, LSU. I think, you look at his stats compared to Joe Burrow's when Joe Burrow won it, and they're favorable. I mean, if you include the rushing yards, and he's been dynamic. Obviously, their team didn't have as great a season, especially losing that opening game to Florida State. But it's oftentimes how you finish, and maybe Bo Nix goes and throws 5 touchdowns today against Washington and seals it. But I give it to Jaden Daniels. I think he's been the most dynamic and best player on a team that's not as good as Oregon's team.
I agree wholeheartedly. Plus 160 still out there for Jaden Daniels of the LSU Tigers. Tony, best of luck this weekend, man. Like, I have the anxiety. I feel it every Sunday. Make sure you let me know who you've got. And Ryan Hoag, thanks again for joining us here on the Huddle. Guys, have a great weekend. Good luck with your bets, and we'll see you soon.
It's not too late to sell, Tony.